This is one paper that I would have liked to bring, but I didn't because I didn't have the capacity to carry it. But you can find it here at our webpage, and it's called Mining for Profits in International Tribunals. And in this paper, we explain how transnational corporations use trade and investment treaties as powerful tools in disputes over oil, mining, and gas. But perhaps the most shocking example is this case of a company called Douron against the people of Peru. The Douron is owned by a billionaire that lives very close to here in the Hamptons called Ira Renner, who owns this house that costs $200 million or so. It's an infamous house because of how you can see the Versailles style. And he owns several smelters in the world, including the United States, including Missouri, Baltimore, he closed down there. But one in particularly important in La Oroya, Peru, which is one of the 10 most polluted sites in the world, according to the World Health Organization. 200 children there have been poisoned by all the toxic, elements there. And the Peruvian government decided, after the failure of this company to clean up the facility as they promised when they took over, they decided to close down the smelter. Well, what the company Douron did was, under the US-Peru Free Trade Agreement investment rules, sued the Peruvian government for $800 million under an international tribunal which is hosted by the United Nations building. It's called the UNCITRAL. So now Peru is fighting for this suit for $800 million. Instead of using that money, countries in the south that are battling all over these cases, if you want to go to the next, there are 137 pending cases only on their ICSID, which is another frequently used tribunal in Washington on the World Bank. 137 cases. 43 of these are related to oil, mining, and gas. And just to give you an idea, there were only 7 such cases filed in the 80s and the 90s. So there has been an explosion of cases of corporations suing governments of the South, either at ICSID in the World Bank or the UNCITRAL, because the responsible public policies to protect the environment and to protect the people. Here we explain how Latin America is suffering most of the cases. 58% of the cases are in Latin America. And this has to do a lot with the new gold rush, as we call it. The prices of gold have stepped up, so now there is this immense appetite for gold that is really destroying communities all over Latin America and other countries of the world. We are working and in close collaboration with organizations like Sierra Club and Public Citizen in cases like the Pacific Rim, a Canadian company that sued El Salvador for $100 million because El Salvador denied a permit to exploit gold, to open a gold mine that would contaminate half of the water of that country with cyanide. So we are working with the people of El Salvador. In fact, next week they're coming to Washington to the Inter-American Human Rights Commission to hear about their cases. In March 2007, for example, Chevron won about $700 million in a suit against Ecuador, which is equivalent to 1.3% of its GDP. And here's the case of Renco. Well, the company here is called Renco. Douron is the subsidiary in Peru. But anyway, so we have all these cases, and these are just examples of, this is the people fighting against mining in El Salvador. Chevron, as the people in Ecuador call it. This is the people in, this is a movie or documentary about it's called the Niños de Plomo, Child of Lead, because it is lead that have poisoned them. It's the case of Peru. And there's also a super egregious case, which is Philip Morris suing Uruguay because Uruguay limited, like it has done in Canada and the US, the number of brands it can use, and you know, it has passed legislation so that there has to be better information in the packages and so on. So Philip Morris has sued Uruguay also because of that, and several other countries. Philip Morris is launching a series of suits against countries that are affecting their profits. This is just, and I don't know if I'm taking too much time, but I don't know if you have heard about space debris. Have you heard about space debris?
Yeah.
Which is all the junk that we are creating around the world, and one day it won't let us out if we ever need to get out to another country. Well, this is what's happening with the bilateral investment treaties. There are already around more than 2,750 bilateral investment treaties among countries. So it is so difficult, the task that we have now, to scale back this system, that this is why I compare it with this. How are we going to do if we continue signing this type of free trade agreements and bilateral investment treaties? When countries are realizing how damaging they are, it is now so difficult for them to cancel them and to roll back these agreements. So this is why it's so important to think about the TPP and its huge implications. Well, this is the last part, is alternative and resistance. Fortunately, we do have alternatives. We created in 2002 a document called Alternatives for the Americas, which for me is kind of a Bible, because this is how we defeated the Free Trade Agreement of the Americas, presenting alternatives, and we do have them. This is recently, there is a public statement on the international investment regime signed by hundreds of lawyers, international lawyers. So it's not only crazy NGO guys like us fighting this. There are lawyers fighting this system, and there are economists also searching for reforms to the investment rules. That one of the investment rules is to prohibit any capital control to give all the facilities to investors to move in and move out their capitals from any country as fast as they want. So there are economists explaining how damaging that is for financial stability around the world. So there have been successful cases. Again, in Cochabamba, Bolivia, the people were able to stop a water privatization project for which Bolivia was sued. But then the people fought back, and the company had to withdraw the suit. In the case of El Salvador, that we're working so much, these people here fought against the mine, and they managed to have their country back their rights, think about the environment of El Salvador, and stop gold mining in El Salvador. El Salvador is the first country in the world that has stopped gold mining, and now is being sued for that by these ruthless Canadian companies. We have fought. Here we are. This is my director, John Cabana, from the IPS. This is the international director of the AFL-CIO in Washington. Sierra Club was there, Public Citizen was there, many other groups were there defending El Salvador in front of the World Bank, because this is where the tribunal is. And there are many countries nowadays challenging the system. In Latin America, there are so many countries trying to withdraw from this, either cancel the bilateral investment treaties they have, or withdraw from these international tribunals. And there are other cases. South Africa, too, is canceling its investment treaties. India is thinking about it as well. And Australia, as it was mentioned, is the one country within the TPP that is against the inclusion of greater investor rights. And here's where it ends, right? Okay, so, so this is it. It is very important that we get involved with this. We have fought many battles in the past. We defeated the FTAA. We defeated in the past the Multilateral Agreement on Investment. We have defeated many things, and I think the TPP has to be the next one. Just one comment. On December 1st, we are organizing a trinational rally, in which will be parallel to the negotiations, the next round of negotiations of the TPP, which will take place in New Zealand. But since we cannot go to New Zealand, because it's very far,